back after the All-Star break. Welcome back, everybody, to the Dead Red Podcast. I am Big Blue in the Bronx, a.k.a. Alex GP, alongside SoxArizona for another great show. Sox will be in just a second, but of course, if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already to both channels. With that being said, all right, so Sox is having some audio stuff, but we'll get that arranged shortly. We also have the giveaway today, which we've been kind of going through for the last few weeks now. I know Tony, who's in the chat. Hope everything is well, Tony. He says Soto will be a Cardinal. He also says be sure to like and subscribe to Sox Arizona and Big Blue in the Bronx. Of course, we will get the giveaway going shortly. We have a lot of stuff to discuss today. We have Juan Soto. That whole spiel, obviously, I put in the chat. And we got Sox. Yeah.
What's going on?
What's going on, Sox? How you been after this All-Star break? I mean, obviously, before the All-Star break, the Yankees did take 2 of 3 from the Sox. But, you know, how have you been doing? How does it feel in Sox land right now?
You know, we got a couple of those big wins against the Yankees that we talked about. We thought it might be a little bit more ugly, but we snuck a couple ones out. The All-Star break was fun. It was nice to see Rafi and Xander over there, as always. But I'm feeling good about this second half push. We just got to win against the division. I know you guys don't have any issues with that, but it's a different story on this side of the division. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting wild card race, and obviously, I still believe that I still think the Red Sox have the worst record against their opponents, probably in baseball.
Yeah.
But before we get into anything else, I'm going to pull up something real quick, and we're going to start this giveaway.
Yes, sir.
So it's going to be it's between 2 people as of right now. Hopefully, our next giveaway is a little bit more on the popular side. I don't think Chris Sale's issue is an injury. Sox have been fine without him all year. It's a tough one. It's tough. Like I wasn't watching, but I actually still haven't seen the replay. But that's not something you want to happen, especially if you're in the wild card race and all this other stuff, competing against other teams. But let's start this giveaway. Obviously, it is the Mets hat. I don't think I have it. Whatever. We'll start. Here we are. It's between 2 contestants, so it's 50-50. And, well, let's spin the wheel, and we'll see who wins. Looks like the account Corner of Baseball will take home the Mets hat. Congratulations, Corner of Baseball. Shout-outs to Tony as well, who has been a loyal supporter of ours and who entered in the contest, did all the right things, but unfortunately it was a 50-50, and some of that 50 is losing. But, Tony, there will be many more giveaways, of course, baseball-related down the line. We have one other Mets hat to give away. Me and Sox have yet to talk about what was I going to say? When that giveaway is going to happen. Unfortunately, as of right now, the Yankees are losing 7-2 to the Houston Astros. Obviously, the Red Sox have a day off, and they will be versing Toronto tomorrow. How do you feel going into that series?
I feel good. The Red Sox play well coming out of All-Star breaks usually. The Sale thing surrounding us is going to be big going into this, you know. And you said you haven't seen the replay on that. It's tough, man. And like that's the big conversation around this team. It has been, you know, for the last couple of years. So I'm excited to see if they can just go into the series and bounce back and play ball, you know. A quick 3-game series out of the All-Star break. Nathan Eovaldi on the mound. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, have they ruled him out indefinitely? You know, is there a timetable for his return, or is he just done for the seaone
All I've heard is that he's out for the season, which I'm not surprised. You know, the first thing I thought of was he's done for the year when I heard about it. I was at work. One of my employees comes up and says, "You see Sale's finger?" I'm like, "Oh, no, of course. His second day back." I'm not surprised by that at all. It's tough, man. I respect the hell out of Chris Sale, and I wish him the best, but it's just so it's not surprising at all. You have the Tommy Johns, the broken ribs, now the broken finger. And what is his career now? That's what people are going to talk about for sure.
Yeah, tough injury to Chris Sale. Of course, I said before I wasn't watching, but hopefully all is well with him. So our first set of subjects today, we could go into this with a lot of things, is first half awards. And we did this on the Twin Bill podcast yesterday. We will do it on the Boys of the Big Apple podcast on Monday with the Yankees. But obviously, we split our teams. So my first award, or at least there's a certain set of awards instead of grading, MVP of your team. Sox, who do you think has been the MVP of the Boston Red Sox so far?
I mean, without a doubt, it's Rafael Devers. You see what this guy does at the plate. It's unstoppable. Verdugo had a couple good stints there, but as far as consistency goes and improvement on defense, Rafael Devers is the guy. You got to pay him. There's no question about it.
I agree with you there. I definitely agree. I mean, for the Yankees, it's pretty obvious. Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
He's been on a cold streak as of late. Hasn't really looked too good. When I was at the Yankee game on last Thursday, that's why we didn't have an episode. And we had a lot of bullshit going on at the stadium, which is something I'll get into eventually. He hit a home run that day, and I was happy. I was happy about it, and it was before Glaber hit his home run to tie the game against the Reds. Shouldn't have lost the series against the Reds. I mean, that was totally uncalled for, and we're about to lose a doubleheader in the season series to Houston Astros, which we'll get into eventually. But Aaron Judge has put on an absolute performance this season. Should be one of the MVP candidates overall. I know there's some other guys that will be in for the contest. I mean, I know Rafael Devers with his hitting has been very good for the Red Sox. Pretty much an understatement there. So, I mean, Aaron Judge is the way to go in terms of the MVP award to give to anyone on any team. But, of course, for the Yankees, it's Aaron Judge. And for the Red Sox, it's Rafael Devers. Who is the biggest surprise on your team?
That's a good question. Do you have a clear-cut guy for the Yankees, or is that up for grabs for you?
I have a few. I have a few.
I think surprising in not a great way is Bobby Dahlbeck for me. Like I've been rooting this guy on for a long time, and he struggles so much at the plate now. It's like, wow. I don't know if there's a Red Sox fan out there that's okay with him starting at first base right now. So he's really surprising for me as far as, I hate to say it, Jackie Bradley Jr. And these are guys that possibly could be on the move here when we look to improve going into the second half. But, I'm going to say Devers, and we expected him to be good. But, I mean, the way he hits these balls, these high towering baseballs that just leave the yard, and the way he slaps the ball the other way, they don't even shift against him as much as they do anymore because he sprays the ball all over the field. I'm going to say it's Devers, and, like I said, Dahlbeck and Bradley have been very disappointing for me.
Derpy Gaming says, I guess there is hope in the world of Red Sox and a Yankee fan not killing each other for once. And that's hope. Yeah, I mean, listen, we've been waiting a while to get this podcast going, and this is the first year of the Dead Red podcast, and the trade deadline is coming up, and then the playoffs, but we have a fun time on here. We bust each other's chops, but we have a fun time. For me, I'm going to point out a few different players. Nestor Cortez, he's kind of come back down to earth as a starter. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Devers is Cole's daddy. For the moment, yes, but very, very slightly for right now, because he did strike him out. What was it, on Sunday? And he fell down and on one of the pitches because he was, I think, going after him, and then he struck him out. I know my boss at NYY News TV kind of created a phrase that's like, knock his ass down, sit his ass down, because he struck out. But Devers has done really well against Garrett Cole, just to put it that way. But for surprises going back, Nestor Cortez, I mean, he had a great start to the season. One of the best pitchers in baseball up to a point. And even if he slowed down in the second half of the first half, to put it lightly, and then maybe even if he slows down now, it just overall, he's been a godsend, and he deserved that all-star nomination 100%. I think he's been one of the better pitchers on the staff, and not always consistent, but you couldn't expect much more from a guy who's supposed to be a 5-starter and a guy I honestly had doubts coming into the season. Now, Tony, I got a couple, and yes, Carpenter is one of them. When the Yankees signed Carpenter for the series against the Rays, I believe, I said, you know what? This guy's going to be a backup. He's not going to play much, blah, blah, blah. Carpenter has surprised me, been one of the biggest surprises I think I've ever seen as a baseball fan. He's still got an OPS over 1, and that's, a lot of players can't do that. He's played in a total of, let's see, how many games at this point? 33. But he's just been one of the better hitters for the Yankees. One of the more clutch bats. 13 home runs, 34 RBIs, and 85 at-bats. He's been better than a lot of the guys on the team who earn more than him. And let me say this. If Anthony Rizzo walks next year, I'm not trying to say, well, this, that, and the other thing, right? And I'm not trying to defend if the Yankees would let him go in that situation, because maybe Rizzo looks for more money after this season. We don't know. But you would at least feel semi-comfortable with Matt Carpenter at first base. And let's just say they deal Gleyber Torres for somebody, or they deal Torres for Soto, or, something happens where you only have one second baseman and it has to be DJ LeMahieu. Carpenter's played a good first base. Is he Anthony Rizzo? Is he DJ LeMahieu at first base? No. But the way he is with the bat, the way he is with these good at-bats, I mean, he's been one of the bigger surprises, and he's just been another godsend. MH, what is going on, my man? What is going on? Yankees should take a look into Dom in a trade. No. No Dom Smith. Maybe the Red Sox. Maybe the Red Sox, but right now I don't think that's I think they would go after Josh Bell rather than a guy.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
Dominic Smith.
Let's talk about Josh Bell, but at first base, I talked about it a little bit with Bobby Dahlbeck. There's got to be a change at first base. I mean, there has to be. So there's some talk around Josh Bell, but is that what you want? The power right there. You're gonna go get it. Let's see what he's hitting right now.
I think he's hitting like the 260s, if I'm not mistaken. He's hitting.
If he's hitting
311, actually. Wow.
Josh Bell hitting 311. Mm-hmm. Go get him. That's what I'm talking about. And not a bad defensive glove either. I don't think he's won a Gold Glove, but yeah, I'm all right with that.
Yeah, Josh Bell. I mean, he's been one of the bright spots for the Nats, and we're going to talk about Soto eventually. We're going to talk about some of these other cats. But he's done really well this year. I mean, in the past, he's had some on and off seasons. Not the most home runs, but he's got 13 home runs up to this point, 50 ribbies, 311, 53 strikeouts. But if I was the Red Sox, I would go out and trade for him, because there's no other hot first base bat right now that's available. And knowing that the Nationals are probably going to sell some of their guys, I mean, if they sell Juan Soto, it's pretty much over. So yeah. If I was the Red Sox, I would take a look at Josh Bell. Derpy Gaming says, I'm a Guardians fan. It is what it is with the name. Our MVP, in my opinion, is either Josh Naylor or Emmanuel Clase. It's just Jose has been in a slump lately. So yeah. I mean, Josh Naylor has been really good for for the Guardians this year. Emmanuel Clase has been one of the more underrated relievers. He did get the save, I believe, in the All-Star game. So that's something as well. But Clase has been good. Naylor's been good. There's a good foundation there, I believe, for the Guardians. They just have to add. And, you guys, in my opinion, from an outsider perspective, have room for that, being one of the one of the least spending teams in the MLB. And I think, you got Ramirez. Maybe in the next few years, get a couple other guys. So, yeah, he struck out the side. So, yeah, I mean, Clase has been – I think I had him on my fantasy team for a little bit before our league was kind of butchered.
Yeah, before sabotage. No, that ninth inning he looked really good too. And, it's the All-Star game, but the emotion you saw from him pumping the fastball by guys, you love to see it, man. Yeah, they got a good foundation over there. I'm going to see them in next week against the Diamondbacks.
Wow.
It's going to be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned a couple of podcasts ago, you're going, and the Diamondbacks are joining you. So
Yeah,
that
exactly.
would
Yeah.
obviously because SoxArizona used to live in Arizona. Um, yes, he did strike out the side youngest team as well. Well, at least one of them. Yeah, and like they're one of the more successful younger teams. Like year after year in the MLB, we see a bunch of uncompetitive teams, and you could predict them:
Yeah.
Rockies, D-backs, Pirates, Reds. The Guardians have been on a downturn the last few years, but looking at them being second place in their division, and I know it's not that good of a division, looking at them being at least at a 500 team, I mean, there's some progress there. And you could say that for the Orioles. I mean, I don't know if the Orioles are at 500 or close to near there, but they're on the uptick. I think the Pirates are slowly on the uptick, and the Guardians are once again probably probably what was I going to say?
Baltimore's
The bet
500.
Baltimore's 500. Okay. So that's promising for Tony and other Oriole
Yeah.
fans out there. I know we have a couple of Oriole fans that listen to this podcast. But the Guardians are probably one of the more successful younger teams that are not the Diamondbacks and all that stuff. Who do you think we need anything at the deadline? The Guardians? That's a tough question.
That's tough.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Oof.
Let's pull it up.
Yeah, that's good question there, Derpy. Good question. So the Guardians right now are 46 and 44. You look at the wild card. They are about 2.5 games out, so it's not typically over. The Mariners, which I'm surprised at, I'm just looking at this now. I didn't realize their comeback was as big enough as to take that second spot in the wild card. Now that the Red Sox and Jays are out, so Sox, man, you got some stuff on your hands. You got some stuff on your hands.
They got some work to do. I'm telling you, there's teams in the AL that want to win, and the way the Red Sox have been losing games, Big Blue. Oh, I don't know if you've been watching, but throwing the ball all over the field, giving up late homers, it's little league stuff, and it's not going to win ball games. We've been seeing it the last week or so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some things right now, Derpy. It says that I think the bottom of the lineup can get better. I mean, Derpy, let me ask you a question. This is because I'm a Yankee fan, whatever. What do you think of Miles Straw? I know, and a Yankee fan asking that doesn't necessarily bring up, great memories. But what do you think of him? Is he a solid center fielder? Because he hits in like the 200s. Like that's where you guys can get better. Maybe they could be a team in the future that trades for Juan Soto if he's not gone at the deadline. He's kind of fell off. Yeah. I'd say bullpen, pitching, and maybe a catcher, but that's just me. I don't know what they could do. I think you probably know better than me, at least, because I don't watch a lot of Guardian baseball. But the thing is with that, now that, with this whole Cleveland rebuild, whatever, is how much is your team going to really want to give up? Obviously, there's a Benintendi out there, maybe catcher. You guys can maybe get Contreras, but there's, once again, how much of the Cleveland Guardians organization, how much they're willing to give up? That's the question. And by the way, Sox, I don't know if you knew this, but James Dolan, the owner of the Knicks, I think his brother owns the Guardians, if I'm not mistaken.
I think I knew that. I knew that was in the family, but and one of them owns probably the Cavs too, if I'm not mistaken. They're right next door, so I'm not surprised if that's the case. But yeah, they got their hands in there.
Derpy says, but he's defensively solid. Yeah, I mean, listen, defense is an important part of the game. I'm going to take a look at something and just look at offensive stats for the Cleveland Guardians because, like, other than Naylor and I guess from an outsider's perspective, once again, for the top heavy, I just feel like it's top heavy with them. They got Ramirez, they got Jimenez, and they got all these other guys. But when it gets to the bottom, it's kind of poor for the Guardians.
They got one guy hitting over 300, and he played in 33. He's got 33 plate appearances.
So as of right now, it looks like the Guardians are 5th best in batting average in the American League, and the Yankees are right behind them. In terms of home runs, they're 13th, so they're not the most power-filled team outside of Naylor and Ramirez. In terms of hits, let's see where they are. They are 5th, so about middle of the pack if you combine all the stats together. Yes, He does own them. Cheapest family in history. Sorry you have to go through that. As a Cleveland Guardians fan. The Yankees need massive bullpen improvement. They haven't been closing games lately. Yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to. Do you have pitching prospects, Derpy? Because once again, I mean, you guys are in a rebuild. I don't necessarily have a lot of recollection in terms of what the Guardians have in their system, but pitching is something you could probably develop. I know the Yankees have done a nice job with it, at least in the bullpen side of things. But if you're looking to trade for, some bullpen guys, it doesn't always have to be the top ones. But the problem is, at least in my opinion, a lot of the guys in the bullpen, they're in your own division, like Scott Barlow from the Royals, Andrew Chafin and Michael Fulmer from the Tigers. They're not going to trade in division. And David Robertson's also a name for the Cubs. But once again, it depends on how much they're willing to give up. Bruin says, hey, Sox. What's going on, Bruin?
What's going on, Bruin?
We are at 500, 44 and 44. Shouts to Tudo. Yep. Orioles' biggest surprise is Tyler Wells, and basically the whole pitching staff is the MVP. Yeah, they've been one of the more surprising staffs overall. In my opinion, the Yankees have a great chance at a title. How much pitching do they have? Though it always comes down to pitching, not just hitting. Well, I'm going to be real. A lot of people have tried to dive this down as a narrative, but it's not a narrative, it's facts. The reason they've really collapsed in the playoffs is the fact they can't hit. We saw that today with the Astros. They didn't score enough runs. Gleyber Torres hit a 2-run home run. And if I'm not mistaken, okay, so they're actually, the game is over, but they did score 3 more runs. Let's see, Judge hit a home run, so that's good. We were talking about him struggling before, so Judge hit a homer. Hopefully he tries to bounce back on that hot streak he was having. But the real problem is they haven't been able to hit. We got Stanton for that reason because we needed hitting. In 2017, we got Todd Frazier. He was shit in the playoffs. There was a couple other guys. Edwin Encarnacion in 2019. He was shit in the playoffs. Kept striking out. They kept putting him in the lineup. I never forget that they put him on the playoff roster instead of Luke Voigt. And that's one of the reasons we lost. It's one of the reasons we lost besides Chapman throwing a fastball to Altuve and us never seeing that one again.
Yeah.
That's what I got to say about that.
No, I think that's a good point that people overlook. That you gotta hit the baseball, but fundamentally in the playoffs, it comes down to matchups. It comes down to pitching, and it's a revolving door. It's pitching and hitting. That's the game of baseball, and the Yankees have been shut down in the playoffs, and their pitching kind of has choked, as we saw Altuve put that over the train tracks. It's a revolving door, but in the playoffs, you got to pitch. It's a necessity, absolutely.
And one of the things, obviously, we'll get to the trade deadline at some point during this episode, is they need contact hitters. And a lot of people actually think on Twitter you could build your whole roster of Aaron Judges and Giancarlo Stanton. No, because if you build up your whole bat lineup full of power hitters, they'll succeed in the postseason. Excuse me, they'll succeed in the regular season. But when it comes to the postseason, you're facing guys like Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, Nathan Eovaldi, a prime Chris Sale. Those guys will blow you away. So, I mean, that's just the one thing. They have to get a contact bat. Donovan, what's going on? He says, what's up, guys? The Yankees should trade for Soto, Castillo, and Benintendi. I fully agree. Add a bullpen arm to that, and that would be one of the best deadlines I think we've ever seen from the New York Yankees.
Yeah, that'd be a big deadline.
That's basically my wish list. Y'all don't need Soto. You need pitching. But listen, if we could take him away from like the Blue Jays or another team,
that'd be big.
It's a luxury. But once again, it always comes to the conversation with the Yankees. How much are you willing to give up? How much are they asking for? And the problem, and we'll get to it, of course, with the Soto thing is whether it's the Yankees, whether it's the Orioles, whether it's the Cleveland Guardians, whether it's the Mets, the Dodgers, in terms of, teams that want Soto, they're going to try to throw in a bad contract like Patrick Corbin and expect the other team to take it on. Yeah. Teams will take that down because Corbin has been absolutely garbage for the Nationals over the last few years. Trade Gallo for Soto. I don't think that would happen. I don't think that would happen. I wish, listen, if it was MLB The Show and, you get all the trades on, I would trade Gallo. I would trade Aaron Hicks. I would trade Gallo, Hicks, and Chapman for Juan Soto.
There might be a team out there though you throw the big name like Gallo in there. They see a big hitter, they might fall for it.
San Diego is another team.
Put the feelers out there.
San Diego's another team. I think they were interested in March. The Braves, I think, were interested. The Brewers are interested. I don't think he's going to stay in the American League. I think he's going to go to a team. Maybe the Yankees get some under the radar reliever, and he'll go to another team where it's not the pressure, but maybe they're still in contention. The Brewers, once again, one of those teams. What was I say? I just mentioned the Padres. The Braves could be one of those teams. So I don't think there's totally I don't think there's totally no market for Joey Gallo. Derpy has a question regarding Contreras. I'd be interested in Contreras, but I don't know what we would give up. We have a good core, and I don't know if they should risk it because he doesn't look like himself at the All-Star week. I am interested though. I'm trying to think of the catchers right now. Austin Hedges is one of the catchers for Cleveland. You know what? We're going to take a look at the Cleveland's top prospects.
Make sure you guys hit up the comments too. Let us know any questions you have. It could be baseball, football, basketball. It don't matter.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is what the show is about here. It's not just us coming up with an agenda to talk about, but you guys answering the questions. Like MH has a question about David Robertson. We'll get to him. So I'm looking at the top 10 prospects right now for the Cleveland Guardians. They have a guy by the name of Daniel Espino, who's their top guy. He right now is at the AA level. Then it's George Valera, who I could have sworn had made his debut before. Maybe I'm just thinking of somebody else or whatever. But George Valera, the outfielder, is their second prospect. He's in AA. Gavin Williams, right-handed pitcher in AA. Then Gabriel Arias, infielder in AAA. Brian Rocchio, infielder, AA. Tyler Freeman, infielder, AAA. Then Logan Allen, left-handed pitcher, AAA. Nolan Jones, third base and outfielder at the MLB level. Jose Tena, infielder, AA. And then Angel Martinez, infielder, A+ level. So now what I'm going to go into is how many are actually in the top 100. Let's take a look at that, and I'll filter it by teams. So right now, they have actually a good number of guys within the top 100. Espino is number 11 on the MLB prospects list. Now, I don't think you're going to have to give up a huge haul for Contreras. You're not going to give up your number one prospect, but at least maybe somebody in the top 10, someone in the top 20 or 30 maybe. I don't think it's going to be – I think a lot of people, honestly, they use these trade machines and they overvalue what you have to give up for certain guys. Like, for instance – Tony brought to my attention earlier a Nationals fan page, what he thinks, of course, is the Nationals fan page, not Tony, but the Nationals fan page kind of made a mock trade for Juan Soto in terms of the Yankees and the Red Sox returns, and I think it's a little bit too much of an overvalued type of thing. Where do you think David Robertson lands? That was one of the questions, of course. Where do I think he lands? He could land with the Yankees, and you know what could happen, though, is two things could possibly happen. They could bang out a trade. They could go Happ, Robertson, Contreras, because they did that with another Chicago team in 2017 when they took Canely, they took Robertson, they took Todd Frazier for an exchange for like 4 prospects and Tyler Clippard. So it's possible they bang everything out in one trade, or maybe he goes to the Red Sox. Because we've been talking probably since April, May about the Red Sox needing some bullpen arms. What would you think of David Robertson on the Sox?
I think that'd be interesting. It's the conversation always turns around to exactly what you said. What are you willing to give up? It's what do the Red Sox have that we're willing to give up at this point? Right now, it's Bobby Dahlbeck, it's Jackie Bradley, and is that team in need of something like that?
I agree. So Tony says if Soto hasn't been vaccinated, he won't go to Toronto. The Jays are going to have a tough time at the deadline trying to improve because of the vaccine. I don't think it's as much as that, and I will tell you why. They have had a ton of injuries this year. Now, beside the fact they're going to be looking at a new manager next year, who is it? I have no idea. They could go after some veteran. They may even stay with Pete Walker. I think it's the fact that, they've had so many injuries this year. Hyun-Jin Ryu out for the season. I know Kevin Gausman starting against Evaldi tomorrow, and Alek Manoah has been good, but let's just say Soto was vaccinated. Let's just say some of these other guys, whatever. Let's just say they wanted guys and they were vaccinated, right? How are you paying them? Jose Barrios, they signed him to a contract extension, I believe, in the offseason. Gausman is not, I think he's on a multi-year contract. Same thing with Kikuchi. You're not necessarily, the Blue Jays are not an organization like the Yankees in the Steinbrenner days or the Dodgers, where they're going to pay all out and pay all these luxury taxes and shit like that. So it's not just what they're going to give up for these guys, but also they have to look long-term and say, okay, well, guess what? We need to find out how we're going to pay these guys. I don't know how much money's coming off the books for them in the offseason. I can't imagine that much. So that's why I think they're going to have a really tough time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
2 Alexes, maybe 2 A's, but I don't think there's another Alex in the chat. Maybe I'm not reading it right. How about Archie Bradley from the Angels? That's a name. Okay, so let's take a look at Archie Bradley. Says I know he was with the Phillies for a little bit. He was with the Diamondbacks. Archie Bradley, 0-1, 4.82 ERA, 2 saves, 21 games, 18.2 innings pitched, 15 strikeouts with an opposing batting average of .239. So his overall stats besides ERA aren't too terrible. But the problem is there's certain guys I would take a chance on. There's certain guys I won't. I guess Bradley you could, but it has to come with another reliever move because, you can't just have JP Sears, Ron Marinaccio, Clay Holmes, and that's it for the relievers you trust. That can't happen. You can't necessarily bank too much on Archie Bradley to come out and be this guy. Last year, Bradley had a 3.71 ERA, which is okay, I guess, in terms of Yankee standards. With 2 teams in 2020, he had a 2.95 ERA. So he's mostly in his career about the 3.94 ERA mark. But off of a casual standpoint, if you have better options, go get better options. But Bradley might be a secondary piece. They try to give up, let's just say Joey Gallo. I don't necessarily see the Angels taking on Joey Gallo or even rebuilding for that matter. But if they want Gallo, that could be a trade. Gallo for a guy like Archie Bradley. Derpy says, you know what? I give up prospects for the Reds relief pitcher that could help us a lot, even though we have Clase and Adam Karinchak. But I don't know if the Reds would do that, but they are the Reds. Yeah, the Reds are an interesting team. I thought maybe 2 years ago they were going to be close to be out of this rebuild. Obviously, that wasn't the case. If you're talking about Luis Castillo, who is a starter, but he would actually be really good for the Cleveland Guardians rotation, you would have to give up a haul. I don't know how much that would entail. Probably, once again, a little bit more than the Wilson Contreras package, but a little less than the Juan Soto package. But he is a fireball. I saw him live a couple of Thursdays ago at Yankee Stadium. He is a fireball. He knows how to throw at Yankee Stadium. And I know, typically guys aren't fazed by fans taunting and all this shit. But in terms of Castillo, he pitched really well. He only gave up 1 run. He was into 120 pitches. And even then, the Yankees couldn't really hit him too much. He had a no-hitter going into the 5th, 6th inning. And I said to myself and to my friends next to me, if there's another no-hitter that I end up attending, I'm not coming to Yankee Stadium ever again. It's just not going to happen.
That's funny.
Tony says that the Orioles GM came out today and said to the fans they will not be sellers at the deadline and that he feels good about the direction of his club. I was very happy to hear this. Listen, I don't think the Orioles should be too aggressive at the deadline. I don't know if they really should make any moves. And you don't normally hear me say that because I think teams should typically pick a direction. But I would say wait for the Blue Jays' downfall, which will be coming in the next year. The Rays will be the Rays. The Red Sox will be the Red Sox. And then in free agency, try to pick it up. Try to sign some guys. Do whatever. Keep Cedric Mullins. Keep Trey Mancini. Keep Austin Hayes. Keep Ryan Mountcastle. Keep the pitching staff you have. Just make some really good upgrades. Hopefully, Adley Rutschman turns out really good for you guys. Then again, that would make you guys good and actual rivals of the Yankees and Sox again. So we don't really want that.
I don't want that at all, actually.
No, in my inner heart, I really don't want that. Derpy Gaming says, yes, that's who want our starting rotation isn't the best. It'll be half of your rental, but I don't know if they should risk it. Here's the thing you could look at, though. I mean, I don't think Luis Castillo is a free agent next year. I don't believe he is. I tell people all the time, even Yankee fans, don't look at it as a rental. And even for the Guardians, you don't have to look at it that way. Because guess what? You could talk about him, wanting this deal or whatever he wants on the table eventually, but you guys are one of the lower salary teams across the MLB. That can easily get done. So I wouldn't worry at all. That's, of course, when and if they trade for Castillo. But keep your comments coming, guys. Loving this. While you guys make some more comments and ask some more questions that we will accept, of course, biggest actually, I forgot to go over one of my surprises, Clay Holmes. Other than maybe one or two appearances against the Reds, he's been really dominant for this team. All-star, one of the best relievers definitely since Mo, because he's in the 0 point something, 1 point ERA range. And we haven't had a reliever like that since Mo. I'm not comparing him to Mo, but with that being said, Clay Holmes has been a godsend.
I will say I had one that I forgot about too, and he hasn't had many plate appearances. I know. Don't come at me, but Jeter Downs came on the scene and made himself.
I saw that.
He made a name for himself real quick. He showed you he doesn't feel that pressure that everybody else feels. He can swing the bat the other way. I like him as a surprise. I'd like to see his future. Rob Refsnyder too, man. He came up and just started hitting the ball hard, poking the ball the other way. I think Rob's hitting over 300. He's had 93 plate appearances. He's hitting 338 right now.
Slugging at that.
I mean, he's playing well out there, playing good defense. So I like the direction we're going defensively and offensively.
And has he been playing a lot of right field?
Yeah, right field.
So for right now, at least you have your right field problem solved, which we were hearing about, of course, beginning of the season. So you guys don't have to fight necessarily over Jackie Bradley Jr. anymore.
No, I mean, and I hate to say it, I love Jackie. I even rooted for him when he, departed us the first time. Obviously, it didn't work out for him in Milwaukee, but I'm okay with letting go of Jackie right now because that's the direction it looks like it's going. We got young talent that's coming up, playing well. Best wishes to him. I think he's not going to be on the team much longer.
Yeah. Derpy says, I mean, Bieber might be gone soon, so I think they should do it. If that's the case and Shane Bieber could be gone, get Luis Castillo.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, obviously there's talks about the Yankees and the Dodgers, but if Cleveland could give up some of their prospects that are a few years away and they don't want to wait that long for a rebuild and they give them up for Castillo, and the Reds are longer away from being a successful team rather than the Guardians. But I could see them doing that. There's a lot of teams out there that have low salaries, but they're, in contention for these stars. And one of these teams, like the Guardians or the Orioles, might make a move we don't even see coming. To this day, the best trade deadline rental was 99. The Astros got Randy Johnson. He went 11-1. Yes, Randy Johnson. Fortunately, he didn't work out as a Yankee, but still one of the best pitchers of all time. Still one of the best pitchers of all time. The story, yes, a couple of weeks ago, if you guys missed it, I had a story. Thank you to Gary Sheffield Jr. He told me a story when we met up in person on NYY News TV Day. He told me a story about what was I going to say? He told me a story about Randy Johnson, and it was really entertaining. So if you guys want to go back a couple episodes, if you want to hear it, let me know. I will be glad to explain it again. Donovan Burrell says the Yankees should sign Edwin Diaz in free agency to replace Chapman for the closing role. No. I think he would be another heart attack. He's done well. He actually had an all-star nomination this year. He's pitching in like the ones in terms of ERA, which has been really good. With that being said, I think stick to Clay Holmes. Stick to maybe if Loizaga, stops this bullshit right now. He's in like the 7 ERA range. If they could get some guys at the deadline, and plus you have a lot of prospects because obviously we're both Yankee fans talking, Donovan. You got Marinaccio, you got a guy like Clark Schmidt, you got JP Sears. There's a couple of guys that you don't always have to focus on. We got to go get a reliever for the future with this, that, and the other thing. But there's going to be an open competition next year in spring training for some of these relief spots when you have Herman coming off the books and Chapman, and you have Britton coming off the books, and you have Tyon, a free agent. So it's going to be interesting more than this year. But obviously, we have not finished the year yet, so we can't speak too much on that note. Biggest disappointment is IKF. For me, no. We're going to get to disappointments in just a minute. Derpy says, I see the Blue Jays trading for him, though. If you're talking about Castillo, it's possible, but always goes into factor that, do they have enough what it takes? And are they going to pay him eventually? That's the thing. So the Yankees' 3 closers would help the team out. Very possible. Very possible. So next is biggest disappointment. Now, actually, I am copying some of my brother's answers from yesterday, but I have 2 my own answers I want to go over. Sox, disappointments. I know you already mentioned kind of one, which was Bobby Dahlbeck. Disappointments for the Red Sox this season.
Yeah, I didn't know we were going to do disappointments, so my apologies on that one. But you look at Bobby Dahlbeck, he's had 252 plate appearances. He's hitting 205. He struck out almost 80 times. The guy was good in both of the last 2 spring trainings, and just struggles, man, on balls down and away, moving away from him, striking out on high fastballs. It was like Rafael Devers a couple years ago, where I was like, oh, every time he's striking out on a high fastball, Devers has turned it around, got his hands around to those fastballs, but we haven't seen that from Bobby Dahlbeck yet. So I'm excited to see if he can turn it around, or he goes the other way. But I was thinking Alex Verdugo might be a disappointment this year. He's turned it around. I'm happy with what I've seen from Verdugo. We talked about Jackie Bradley Jr. hitting 202 right now, 261 plate appearances. The guy just doesn't see the ball. He hasn't his whole career, and I've stuck up for him, and I'm about done. I really am, and I respect the hell out of him. But that's about who it is, Jackie and Bobby Dahlbeck. You see low numbers from JD Martinez than what we're used to. He's still hitting over 300 right now, but he's been struggling lately. Let's just stick with those guys for now.
Yeah. Gary Redinger says the Red Sox are bums. Gary, I feel like you've popped in here before, and I think you're a Yankees fan, maybe. I'm just guessing because I thought we saw Gary before. Yes, Luca. Shouts to Luca, my brother, of course. That's co-host of Twin Bill and Boys of the Big Apple. Says, do you see Josh Bell as a possible trade target for the Red Sox? Me and Sox were talking about that earlier. Yep, that is true. We see Josh Bell as a possible target for the Sox. Not Dominic Smith, not some of these other guys, but Josh Bell is definitely a go-get target for the Red Sox at first base. Do you think, and I don't know necessarily because obviously the Red Sox operate their organization different than the New York Yankees, but do you think there would be a shot, let's just say for example's sake and, scenario's sake, that the Red Sox trade for Josh Bell and he's on a 1-year contract and they're waiting to possibly see if they want to sign him or not to an extension? Do you think it's a possibility that they give Dahlbeck another chance after Bell, depending on impression, or they just say, look, we resigned Bell. That's going to be our answer going forward?
It looks like the Red Sox, to me, it seems like the Red Sox aren't concerned that much at first base. So, they bring him in as a possibility of improvement. And I think, if they pull that trigger, they're going to stick with him. It's Bobby Dahlbeck. Josh Bell struggles a little bit. So what? We're used to the toughness over there at first base with Christian Vasquez as our backup first baseman. They've been playing well enough. So I think it'd be an improvement. And if it wasn't, it would probably be short term rather than Bobby Dahlbeck struggling at all times.
Yeah. So Gary is a Yankees fan. So I've confirmed that. I got one. How about this happy birthday cake, Sean Murphy to Cleveland? Sean Murphy's, I mean, he's not the best offensive catcher, but he's very good defensively. Getting him would take him, and that would be it would be a better situation for him in Cleveland. I think he would maybe shine a little bit more. Once again, if his chemistry with the pitching staff, the very young pitching staff over there, it would just be a better situation. Did you hear about the Paul Blackburn situation by any chance?
I did not.
Paul Blackburn, all-star pitcher from the Oakland A's.
Okay, yes, I did.
They didn't want to fly him out to the All-Star game.
How ridiculous?
How cheap can you be?
Seriously, if I'm a fan of that team, I'm pissed, man. I'm pissed.
I think pissed is an understatement if I was a fan of the A's.
I heard Juan Soto had a fly commercial to the All-Star game.
That's because he rejected their deal.
Oh my God.
How petty can you be?
That's ridiculous, man. I got to fly. I'm flying commercial to Ohio in a week. These guys should not be subjected to that. The seats are this big. It's ridiculous.
Then again, too, Derpy's talking about Sean Murphy and stuff like that. Maybe he'll catch a plane with Sean Murphy because maybe the A's don't want to fly him out to Cleveland.
Hey, I'll save a seat for him.
At the beginning of the season, the odds for the Orioles to make the playoffs was 50,000 to 1. Now it's 2,000 to 1. The Orioles right now, I believe, are standings. Let's go to wild card. They're 3.5 games out. So it's not a failure if they don't make the playoffs. But if they do make the playoffs, I mean, that would once again be very good. Donovan, I will get to your question in just a second. Guys, keep it coming. I mean, we got some really awesome comments today. That's how the show keeps going, by the way. Tony's, already went over this one. What's a low-key surprise team that could scoop up Judge? Okay, so Dodgers are always the possibility. San Francisco because of his home.
Yeah.
San Francisco because of his home. So we said, obviously, Yankees, Mets possibly. I would have to think. I just don't think he's, in my personal opinion, I don't think he would go from a bigger market to a smaller market, in a sense. Like, for instance, if the Guardians were in on him, I don't think he's going there. He could become the highest player in baseball and get the years he wants, but I just don't see him as that type of guy. I don't see him going to the O's, for example. I think he goes to another team, and of course, that's if he doesn't come back with the Yankees, but he could go to the Mets. He could possibly go to the Jays if they want him, if they have enough money for him. I would say the Rangers be the surprise one for Judge. It's possible. It's possible. I mean, they've signed some really bad contracts though over the past free agent period. Like Marcus Semien, we talked about him a few weeks ago. Terrible. John Gray hasn't been that great. So the Rangers could be there. They have a lot of work to do though. Think about it, Sox. We talk about how bad they are this year, but they did get Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter in the draft. I mean, that's a steal.
Yeah, that Jack Leiter, man, that name just floats around baseball. That's a big steal. So I still think they got a lot of work to do, but
What about Judge to Atlanta? I think it could be possible. I mean, they have Acuna. I don't know if they paid him yet. Albies is waiting in the wings, and of course, I'm talking on a money perspective, but I wouldn't rule it out 100%. I wouldn't rule it out. What should the Yankees do in free agency? Get another shortstop. Trey Turner's a free agent. It depends, obviously, how you are, because some Yankee fans are like, oh, let's call it Volpe and Peraza. Do this, do that, whatever. In terms of that, I would want to go get another shortstop. Syndergaard's a free agent. Maybe the Yankees attack him. But I think the first priority is re-signing Aaron Judge. If you don't re-sign Aaron Judge, you better be doing a very good job of trying to replace him. That's all I'm going to say. Tony says, how do you feel about the Red Sox and Yankees draft? Of course, I didn't pay too much attention to the draft, but I know, obviously, Spencer Jones was their first-round pick out of Vanderbilt, and he's got some really similar stats to Judge in his junior year, which I find very interesting. And his frame is similar too, because I believe they're both 6'7". So that hopefully that's not a telling tale of signs to come. Excuse me.
We got another shortstop in the draft. So I know Sox fans are like, another shortstop in the draft. So I think Xander's on his way out. That's obvious. But how many years is that? How many weeks is that? Who knows? I didn't pay much attention other than that, though.
Yeah. So for my biggest disappointments, Josh Donaldson for me, because I expected, at least hit home runs. If you're not going to hit for average, if you're going to strike out a lot, shout out to Jeffrey. What's going on, Jeff? He's got a channel as well. Be sure to go subscribe to his channel. Talks about a lot of things, Mets, WWE, Nets, and Giants as well. He's a Mets fan, so Jeffrey, if you want to chime in on anything, please let us know and ask some questions. But biggest disappointments in terms of Donaldson, obviously, I wasn't necessarily a fan of the trade at first because I'm like, dude, we just picked up $25 million for a guy who's 36 fucking years old. So how is he disappointing necessarily? He's been great on defense, but you need to be good at you need to be more than good at defense to be able to, I would say, put yourself as a $25 million player. And he's not been good offensively. He's been trash. His swing is garbage. I used to be a huge fan of his swing, huge. But unfortunately, it's just so toned down. Now, he was getting hot for a little bit. I remember he hit 1 or 2 home runs against the Sox. I think he hit a grand slam against the Sox, if I'm not mistaken, right?
First inning grand slam.
Right. So, up to this point in the season, 9 home runs, 35 ribbies, and a 228 average with his OPS of 704. I mean, that's not getting it done if you're getting paid $25 million over the next 2 years. So he's one of my bigger disappointments. Jonathan Loaizaga, I know he obviously had that injury. He's still coming back from it. And on Thursday, when I saw him against the Reds, he didn't look good. He actually gave up one of those runs. However, with that being said, I still consider him a disappointment. Now, the first part of the season, we could debate whether he was injured or not, but he just didn't get the job done. He's got an ERA right now at 7.45. His total stats look like this: 1-2, 7.45 ERA, 21 games, 20 strikeouts, and 19 1/3 innings pitched, and a total of a 286 batting average against. That's not Jonathan Loaizaga. That's somebody else. So he's been one of the bigger disappointments. I know my brother said IKF was a disappointment in terms of defense, definitely, because he was supposed to be at least a decent stopgap, and he hasn't been. 13 errors at shortstop. How do you explain that? I don't think they're going to attack that this offseason, but hey, listen, you know what? We'll see how they go about that. And obviously, as a hitter, I don't expect too much. And Garrett Cole, obviously, I've had my rants on Garrett Cole. He has been a disappointment, though, because you're, $36 million. You're supposed to be sure about your ace going into big games and occasionally having a blow up. But when you could count on almost 2 hands how many blow ups he's had this season compared to other starts he's had where he's done really well, I mean, $36 million, it's not going to cut it. Donovan says that Josh Donaldson's swing is all over the place. Yep. I mean, mostly, I have a bat to really show it. You got like this. Everything's up. Everything is up. So everything's going up in the air. And that's what.
Is that because he's playing at Yankee Stadium? He thinks he thinks he needs to pop it up over those short fences. Is that what it is?
I knew something about that was coming like that.
Yeah,
but he's not an opposite field guy. So
No.
even if he did think that, I'd be like, dude, you're not an opposite field guy. But Jeffrey says, hearing that the Mets are in the running for Daniel Vogelbach, Josh Bell, Nelson Cruz, and CJ Cron for a potential DH upgrade. Vogelbach, I mean, he's like Chris Davis, Chris Carter. He's got 12 home runs on the year, 228 average. He has a higher OPS, though, than Josh Donaldson. But as a power bat, sure. Overall, as a bat, I wouldn't be too keen on him. The highest he's hit in his career is 228. So If the Mets would actually, if the Mets were allowed in talks with the Nationals for whatever, because in division trades are very rare. But if, let's just say, they were talking, Josh Bell, if you're looking for a DH upgrade, that could be one. CJ Crone, I think he's having a good year. I feel like he went to the All-Star game. I think he did.
did.
CJ Crone, 21 home runs, 69 RBIs, 298 average, 902 OPS. I would go after. That's another guy we talked about first base. I know. So let's just say they go out and get Josh Bell, or some team gets Josh Bell. Get a power bat. I mean, I don't know how defensively he is at first base, Sox, but that's another option.
That's another option for sure.
And Josh Bell, we talked about earlier, he's hitting like in the teens with homers, and he's hitting 311. So that would not be a bad option, obviously, with DH upgrades. And Nelson Cruz, who's like 40, but he's still doing really well, or at least up to last season. 242, 8 home runs, 48 RBIs. So not necessarily all of the power, but he's doing at least better in his last 7 games, more of the situational hitting, of course. Donovan says maybe IKF being in New York pressure on him because a lot of players playing in New York. Yeah, listen, I that was brought to my attention earlier. Oh, well, Jeter's first year, he made a lot of errors and all that stuff. Here's the thing, and I'm not pointing the finger, obviously, at Donovan, because Donovan's a subscriber of mine, and he was just bringing up a question. I don't necessarily like this whole pressure thing, because obviously there is the thing, well, if you could, play in New York, you can make it anywhere. But if you're a stopgap coming in for like 1 or 2 years and you're expected to be at least a defensive shortstop or a savant, and you're not doing that, it's going to be very hard for fans to accept that. When fans know that you could have gotten a Correa, when fans know that you could have just said, listen, let's call up Peraza, or let's call up Volpe, or do whatever and have the growing pains. Because IKF is what he is right now. Whether you talk about his Gold Glove at third base, whether you talk about his defensive play at shortstop on a good day, that being, of course, not the errors, his ceiling is not as high as a Volpe or a Peraza. But those are also potential players. So that's where that situation comes in.
So you don't think the Yankees with IKF coming in, you don't think they told him, we want you to be the guy? Because then, the pressure starts coming in. If they told him that you're only going to be here for 1 or 2 years, I know that's what the contract is, but, what did they tell him when he came in?
That's a very good question. I don't think they directly told him something like that, but he has to know that he was a stopgap.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so, right?
You would hope so, because if this guy was the long-term guy for the Yankees, I would bash my head in. I would be like, what the fuck are we doing here?
But they might have told him that.
You have to, at least, whether you're a stopgap or you were told that you're the guy, you can't be committing 13 errors on the fucking ball field.
Absolutely.
Knowing that you have Volpe and Peraza, 2 guys that could be ready within the next year. Peraza more likely than Volpe, up your ass wanting to play in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And to this point, it does surprise me, but it doesn't at the same time, that Peraza has been called up, because if this was the Red Sox, if this was the Rays, if this was the Jays, if this was the Braves, Peraza would have been called up already and IKF would have been benched. But I don't know what their committal is to IKF. Maybe it's an ego thing for Brian Cashman. But, he has to know that he's a stopgap and that his days are limited. And also, it just has to get through his head, because he wasn't even in Minnesota for 24 hours.
Yeah.
That has to say something.
Yeah, it does.
Donovan says, actually already went over that. Jeffrey says, if I had to pick from those 4, it would probably be Crone or Bell. Yeah, 2 very good hitters, at least this season. Tony says, Tyon is pitching against the Orioles tomorrow. The Orioles are going to score a lot of runs. LOL. I honestly hope that's not the case, because that would, either way, it would further it would further put the narrative that we need a starting pitcher. And it's not a narrative. Well, it's a fact. We talked about disappointment. How about let me word it correctly, of course. Player that performed the way you expected them to perform.
Ooh, that's a good question there. I think Xander Bogaerts probably exceeded a little bit of expectations there. He's still hitting over 300 on the season. I would say probably Alex Verdugo. You look at his stats across the board, hitting 262, 306 on base percentage, 372 slugging percentage. He's had 363 plate appearances, and he's got 88 hits. Verdugo sprays the ball over the field well. He has clutch hitting. I think he would be my nomination for a player that you did what they expected them to do.
I'm going to go in a negative right here. Aaron Hicks. He's been better as of late, and that's not saying total too much because he did heat up for a little bit before his injury. But Aaron Hicks has been the player I expected. I came in and I said, Aaron Hicks, I don't expect him to do much of anything. He sucked for a lot of the first half of the year until he went on his hot streak. Then he went on a hot streak, and now he's kind of cooling down. But at this point in the game, he's the player I expect him to be. Did I expect him to be the worst player on this team? No. Is he the worst player on this team? No. But is he, what you paid him for? And is he worth the contract that he got? No. So overall, in terms of defense, offense, all-around player, and effort, Aaron Hicks is the player he's the guy that I expected him to perform like. Worst move that impacted the team. Sox.
That is a very good question. And the first thing that comes to my mind is Kyle Schwarber. Like, I know Red Sox fans tried to play it off like we don't need him. He's, he was here to help us maybe win one World Series and that's it. But, the dude is swinging the bat well, and I liked him a lot. He was a fan favorite in Boston. And, we haven't gotten much in return from that. But I'm gonna have to say Kyle Schwarber. Like, I would love to have him on this team this year, especially with the struggles that we've had in those particular positions. Man, I think we'd be in a better position with him.
If I'm not mistaken, he stunk in the home run derby, right?
He did stink in the home run derby, yes.
I mean, that's not something, of course, I'm concentrating on, but the fact that he's there kind of tells you, okay, and you're still dealing with this whole Bobby Dahlbeck thing. MH says Gallo needs to bring the beard back. Yeah, but listen, the Yankees have their rules in terms of hair, and it's funny. And listen, we could critique those rules all day. Someone said on Twitter the other day that the Yankees hair rules are racist, and I don't believe that, because I'll say this. First of all, the guy was a Yankees fan, so I'm like, you're making content off of them. You're making tweets off of them. Don't support the team if you think they're racist. A. B. You talk about Luis Castillo and his braids and stuff. A. He literally said that he would cut them off if he became a Yankee. If he had to go somewhere else, because he doesn't have a no trade clause, he would go somewhere else. He would cut it off if he has to. That's A. B. Does anybody not remember what the fucking Red Sox looked like in 2013? What if Mike Napoli or Dustin Pedroia was traded to the Yankees all of a sudden? Would they have to cut their beards off? Fuck yeah.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. I never understood the rule. And you said we could critique it all day. I think it's ridiculous. But and I love that the Sox were like, you know what? We're going to do the opposite. Every single one of you motherfuckers has to grow a beard. Even if it looks all bad, you got to grow it out.
So MH says, what would be all-out moves at the deadline for the Yanks that wouldn't include getting Juan Soto? Castillo would be one of them. Brian Reynolds. Now, I don't think they'll deal him, but if they get Brian Reynolds, that's one of the wins of the deadline. Andrew Benintendi. I think those three right there. And you don't necessarily, I don't think you can really make an all-out move, a fuck the league move in terms of relievers. Robertson has been one of the better ones, but it's not like, okay, I don't think he was an all-star. I don't think he's not on a good team, so it's like he's recognized a lot. But for guys like Brian Reynolds, not Juan Soto, of course, so it would be Castillo, Soto, and Benintendi, all recognizable, almost all-stars, if not all-stars. Those would be fuck the league moves and all-out moves, and I would be totally happy with that if that was a deadline. Obviously, you could pick up the tab on a relief pitcher that nobody knows about and turn him into an actual savant, which Brian Cashman, I admit, has done a good job of. Clay Holmes being one of those guys. Worst move, I would say the IKF and Donaldson trade up to this point. IKF, I didn't expect. Okay, let me stop there because I would be lying if I said I didn't expect IKF to be at least a solid hitter. I said in spring training that he could be a leadoff hitter. I was wrong about that. Very fucking wrong. I expected him to be good defensively. He's committed 13 errors, which, once again, if that take was not idiotic of me, I'll admit. The hitting take was idiotic because he had never been a leadoff hitter in his career, or at least for the most part. And other than singles, he doesn't do much of anything. But put aside that, shout out to Jeffrey, Jamestown baseball commissioner. What's going on, Jeffrey? But put aside that, he was expected to come in here and be good defensively, and he hasn't been. We got rid of Gary Sanchez, which all fine and well. I wanted Gary Sanchez going from the get-go. And I didn't think the Yankees were a serious baseball team until he was gone, because he was literally my least favorite player on the baseball team. I wanted him gone for such a long time, and people would be so into it with these hot streaks and all this shit. You know, they would jerk off to it and all this shit. But I was so excited when he was gone. Unfortunately, the return hasn't been good enough. Gio Urshela, he's having, I don't know if it's a better defensive year, but he's been better offensively, which this team needs offense. Like if you keep Urshela, you add Correa or even add Peraza, and then you have LeMahieu and Torres at second base, and then you have a first baseman like Rizzo. That's already a good infield. Like you don't need to upgrade anymore. You could, but at the sake of offense, should you really? That's where we go with Donaldson. And I said he was one of the disappointments. He was supposed to be a power bat, and he's only hit like 9 home runs to this point, which that's not something you expect him to do. 36 years old, whatever. He was brought in, $25 million, took on the contract. Very good defensively. Offensively, he hasn't gotten it done. And Ben Nordvet, we could kind of thank him a little bit for Jose Trevino, but banking on a guy like him wasn't necessarily the greatest move of all time. A guy that only got like 39 at-bats in the big league, only a couple of reps at catcher, with potential. It just didn't seem like the best thing in the world. So I think the worst move that the Yankees made this offseason probably was that move, IKF Donaldson trade. Guys, also keep going with the questions and all that stuff as we go, because that will only prolong the podcast, and we have a fun time with you guys. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and also share this out. Get a lot more people in here. But more to positive light. Best move.
Ooh. Go ahead with that one first.
Jose Trevino. Judge was not a move. That's a non-move. That's worked out. Pitching. That's a non-move. Nothing upgraded in the rotation. Not really anything with the relief pitching other than prospects coming up and doing their job. Jose Trevino, we needed a defensive catcher, and we also needed someone who could provide some offense. After Gary Sanchez was traded, we were not looking very good in terms of offensive catchers. Kyle Higashioka and Ben Nordvet. Defense, yes, that was there. But offense, especially comparing alongside a Donaldson trade and IKF, it just didn't look very good. And then they got Trevino, which a lot of people were pissed about, and I've seen some people kind of eat their crow on that. The guy we had on here when we first started our podcast, Murph from Clapback Sports, he actually was a big anti that trade. He said, I liked Albert Abreu. Why did they go get Trevino? They have like 3 catchers now. And he's turned out to be one of the biggest differences, top 3, top 2 difference on this team. Because even though Higashioka has been trash and they've been giving him a lot more attention at different points during the season, with Trevino, solid hitting, not always 100%, but solid hitting. The effort's always there, and the defense is stellar. How many times has he picked off runners? More than I've seen Gary Sanchez do, more than I've seen Brian McCann do, more than I've seen Russell Martin do. He's been excellent, and he 100% earned his All-Star nomination. And that's one thing I could give Brian Cashman. You traded for this guy, and you also got Albert Abreu back. Now, has he performed when he came back? Not really, but we're looking at Trevino, and you won that trade. Sox.
Yeah, man. The Sox have had quite a few little moves here and there, not a bunch of major ones. The Kyle Schwarber move was a big one. We activated Cutter Crawford, and that was a big talking point early on in the season. But in the off season, we brought over Yolmer Sanchez at second base. He hasn't made quite a difference at all for us. So that one went under the carpet pretty quietly. Rob Refsnyder was moved up. James Paxton, the Red Sox signed James Paxton, and I'm looking forward to that one. That one possibly could move into our best move. But Rich Hill and James Paxton, I thought, we're going to be huge, but we haven't really got much production out of those so far. That was back in December. So got elected for Tim LaCastro from the Yankees. He went over there for you guys and did nothing. So just bringing guys up, bringing guys up. That's it.
Okay, so we'll see, of course, if that plays out for the Red Sox and all of that. Let me ask you a fun question. Let me ask you a fun question, whatever you want to interpret it. Like the other day when I was listening to, because I was at work and I was watching a live stream. My boss at NYY News TV, Pete, he was watching, and it was the same day that Chris Sale got taken out because of his injury. He said Sawamura takes too long on the mound, and that makes him want a pitch clock. Do you say the same?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes he speeds it up. And there's pitchers like that will go fast and slow. Like we've seen Greinke mess around with it sometimes. But I'm not a fan of the pitch clock. Like I don't care how long baseball games take. I don't know why everyone's got to complain about it. But yeah, Sawamura takes too long. He can't get in a rhythm himself if he takes that long. It's ridiculous.
So Donovan says, do the Sox have a plan to let Xander walk and sign Trey Turner?
That's an interesting. I haven't heard anything about Trey Turner, but yes, it's possible that Xander walks because they're talking so much about Rafael Devers and the way he's improved so much. But Trey Turner would be interesting, man. That would be an interesting one for sure.
Now remind me, is Xander a free agent next year or the year after?
It's the end of next year.
Okay, so maybe if this IKF experiment is done by that time, which it should be, maybe we steal Xander. Maybe we'll steal Xander. But obviously, a lot of stuff has to play out before that. With that being said, most overrated.
Wow. Most overrated, huh? What do you got for the old Yanks for the most overrated?
I got Garrett Cole.
Makes sense.
Because a lot of people have said, well, Garrett Cole's pitched really well this year, this, that, and the other thing. I have a very bad confidence issue with Garrett Cole. And it's not like, oh, well, he makes bad pitches. I think it starts the fact that he gets in his own head and makes himself worry. Opening day was a blow up. He's had multiple blow ups this year. And the fact that the offense has saved him in certain situations and the relief pitching and all that stuff, that's kind of scary. And he's had a handful of good starts against Boston. Other than the 2-run home run to Jeter Downs, that was a very good start. Could have been a shutout. The start against Detroit when we blew him out on Apple TV, which was like 12-13, 14-0. There was a couple other starts. One against Cleveland at the stadium. That was a very good start. So, yes, you can count on a couple of fingers how many good starts he's had, but you could also count on almost two hands how many bad starts he's had. And if he was a 3, a 4, a 5, I wouldn't care as much. But he's $36 million. Okay. He's supposed to be your ace, 2. 3, with your ace, you're supposed to be at least confident, or at least 75% confident that he's going to go into these games and rake, especially against the Red Sox, especially against the Astros, especially against the Jays. And he has not done that consistently. And I feel like his away splits are worse than his home splits. But let's just say we go for one game and we stick with the 3 pitcher rotation. let's just say we go to Boston for Game 4 of the ALDS. Is it going to be different than Game 1 just because he's away? I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that. Right now, the fact that a lot of people, including myself, don't have confidence in him, and a lot of people more do because, oh, well, he pitches good against bad teams. I think he's severely overrated by Yankee fans, and I feel like he just hasn't earned the respect, the true respect. Sox, your thoughts on the most overrated player for Boston?
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a couple guys that are in the pitching staff that I come to my mind, and I think the first one is probably Michael Wacha. You know, there was a lot of talk of Michael Wacha coming in, and he's a guy that I forgot to mention in our moves, and he's not by any means like a bad move, but there's a lot of talk about him. Like, hey, you know, the Red Sox played against this guy in the 2013 World Series, coming in here, seasoned veteran, going to turn this pitching staff around. He really hasn't had that, you know, impact on the starting five that we thought he was going to. I think it's important to have that kind of guy, and the Red Sox haven't. You know, we were expecting Sale to come back. We were expecting Wacha to lead that ship, you know, until Paxton and Sale got back, but he's been inconsistent along with Rich Hill. You know, there was times I thought Rich Hill was one of our best pitchers. He's kind of fallen off. Pivetta, we were begging for him to pull the reins a little bit. He kind of struggled a little bit this year, even though he's had some good outings. Franchi Cordero, I would say he's a little bit overrated offensively. He's been hitting the ball well, but you expect a lot out of him coming from from that Benintendi trade, and he hasn't shown us much. So I would say Franchi on offense, and then you got Rich Hill, probably the seasoned veterans that you expected to pull the reins on the starting five that aren't really showing up this year.
MH asks, where do the Red Sox go? If you're talking in terms of trade deadline, he says sell. The Red Sox aren't selling. Once again, he does this. It's like you bust your chops every podcast. But then again, you're supposed to team up with Sox. Remember, your teams were teaming up for the All-Star game in the voting, which never made any sense to me. But they probably first base, relief pitcher, maybe a starter. Yeah, I think that's it. If I'm going off the top of my head in terms of
That's about it.
In terms of that stuff, yeah. In terms of going off the trade deadline or whatever. Most underrated.
Underrated, man. That's a good one. I like Evaldi in that role. I know he's one of those guys that you want to pull the reins a little bit on that starting five. He's really settled down. Evaldi gives up so many first inning home runs and runs, it's ridiculous. But he settles in. He settles into games and has effective outings most of the time. Let's see. And what award are we on again? I'm sorry.
We are on the most underrated.
Underrated. I like the way Christian Arroyo plays. He hasn't seen many plate appearances this year, but that dude coming at the end of last year, hitting home runs in Atlanta and Houston, playing into this year, I think he's been a solid addition. And one more on offense, I'd have to say JD Martinez. I like this offense still has 5 guys that are still hitting over 300, which is they're the only team in the MLB that has that kind of number. So I'll take those 2 guys.
Fun fact, just to even spray off of baseball for a second, former Giants head coach Joe Judge was named the quarterbacks coach officially of the New England Patriots. So look for that offense to possibly be very poor, very poor. What team will come alive in the second half? Ooh, that's a very good question. We've seen the Mariners come alive. They've got a similar record, actually, to the Tampa Bay Rays. I feel like the Guardians could. That's possible. I
think Texas could.
Texas 42 and 49, but remember, Seattle had a very bad record, so that's not too far off. Maybe San Francisco, and it's very tough right now because you got the Padres and you got the Braves, and though the Padres only have about 4 more wins maybe all of this trade talk with the Giants kind of propels them and say, listen, they're talking about us selling. We don't want to do that. Fuck them. We're going to go into it and we're going to play very hard. But yeah, I mean, those are some teams that could possibly, I mean, what do you think, MH? But yeah, those are some teams I think could possibly light it up in the second half, possibly for a comeback and whatnot. Most underrated for me, I would probably have to say Ron Marinaccio. I know everybody looks at JP Sears as one of the guys. I'll talk about DJ LeMahieu too because he's on that list. Ron Marinaccio, when he came in situations, first off, the first part of the year, I remember they put him in a situation where Severino was really struggling. Sox, you should remember that. That was actually the second game of the season. And he came in, and he was good. He walked like one or two guys, but ended up getting out of the inning and stuff like that. But other than that, in the first half, before he got sent down, he was struggling. Gave up a couple of runs to the O's in a game that was supposed to be really over. He gave up some runs to the Guardians in a large deficit game. That's when they sent him down. I actually saw him in AAA when he was sent down. He looked good. And then you go to after he gets called up, and listen, I don't have the splits right now, but he's been really good. Pitching next to the ones in ERA probably since then. And he's got a 108 opposing batting average on the year. That has to be one of the better opposing batting averages in baseball. And, in terms of this bullpen and the up and downs we've had the last few weeks with Wandy and Miguel Castro, he's been one of the bright spots. And I'm hoping that he comes back next series because it's quite a possibility. MH says the Red Sox are 15 and a half games behind. Why am I crazy to sell when the team is going through a weird phase?
The competitive division, man. If it in any other division, obviously you'd be it'd be different. But you're in a good division where we talked about it last year. The fourth place team had over 90 wins, so you're more competitive than you think in this division. I'll say that.
It's not just that; it's the fact that the American League is, if all of a sudden, getting all competitive now. Because before we talked about, it's just the Red Sox, the Orioles, the Rays and the Jays, and then the Guardians, and that's about it for all the teams competing. Now you got the Mariners in the mix, and it's going to be competitive. MH says that the Cards are going to have a very good second half. That's possible, man. That's possible. I know we had a couple of weeks ago, we had Jeff Nelson, one of my subscribers, come in. He was talking about the Cardinals. AL East is the best division in baseball. I agree with that. I firmly agree with that. And the second best probably goes to the NL West, in my opinion, because they're very competitive year after year after year. At least the top three. Then the bottom two are trash. But AL East definitely takes the most competitive. Can't say the same about our football teams, but hey. Tony says Mountcastle is the most underrated Oriole. I could definitely see that. Or Giants. Yeah, I mean, I said that when I was talking about it, that all of these trade talks with the Giants, and they say, oh, well, maybe Carlos Rodon's gone, maybe Jock Peterson's gone. Maybe that lights a fire under their ass. And they say, listen, the Braves and the Padres are the only two teams besides the Cardinals that are competing for a wild card spot. And then they play up. Maybe they sneak in. That's how the Dodgers did it last year. I mean, hell. Tony says, I think there is more than a good chance that the Orioles will finish in fourth place above 500. I know I'm biased, but they have played way above expectations. Yeah. And you could ask a lot of people. Maybe people were counting on the Orioles to have 100-plus losses this season. They've turned it around, and they're turning it around very slowly. Right now, obviously, there's a bit of a battle for that third, fourth place spot with the Sox and the Jays. But if the Jays continue to fall, possibly look at them to finish it last. And that would be the worst, or one of the worst predictions I think I've ever had in the history of this channel. Because I originally said that the Padres and the Jays would be the World Series teams this year. And besides that, I also made a prediction that and this is the weird tale of predictions. I had the Rams this past year winning the Super Bowl. And, of course, I won that. But I also had the Bengals finishing 1-15, and they went to the Super Bowl, but they lost. So I continue to live with that every single day. MH says, can the Yanks afford to make underrated trades like they did last year with Holmes when they need a splash of some sort? Yes, they can, because I'll tell you why. We could talk about the Castillos and the Sotos and the Benintendis. For a guy like Scott Barlow or Andrew Chafin or Michael Fulmer, and Fulmer, I think, has been an all-star a couple of times in his career. Those are like more under the radar guys. They're not dominant relief pitchers. They're role players that get the job done, and they will do that in a Yankee uniform. So that's why you don't have to give up an A-plus prospect. You won't have to give up Anthony Volpe, Peraza, or Austin Wells. You won't have to give up those guys for those type of guys because they're more under the radar and they're not as recognized. And the fact that they're on losing teams actually helps. They're not dominant players like Luis Castillo is on his team, and they're still losing. They're not dominant players like Juan Soto is. And Juan Soto is very dominant, but at the same time, he's on a losing team. Yeah, you also predicted the Texans to be 3-14 this coming season. So will that be wrong as well? I mean, that could be wrong. Maybe that could be wrong. Maybe it's not wrong. We'll see. Obviously, that Texans game coming off a bye for the Giants is going to be a really interesting game. I heard that the Rangers are a top team in the trade talks for Juan Soto per John Heyman. I don't know how much money they have because they spend a lot. John Gray, Marcus Semien. Obviously, they got Corey Seager, who was an all-star. So Semien doesn't look good right now, obviously. John Gray's been all right, for at least, from what I hear. So I don't necessarily know all their outfielders. So I guess they could use an outfielder, but they have to, in my opinion, trust their farm system, but at the same time, they can't. Because if you're going to give up a lot of those pieces for the farm, you have to make sure that the team spends money elsewhere. Because after Juan Soto, they still need to make a lot of adjustments. And that actually is our next subject. You guys can obviously keep coming in the chat with the questions and stuff like that. MH says, if Donovan gets traded to the Knicks, will Luka do a surprise live stream? He probably will. I could either say surprise live stream or a surprise Twitter space, because I know he's been a little bit in that phase other than Boys in the Big Apple for a little bit. But I know obviously people are still jumping up in the air that it could possibly happen. We'll see. We'll wait for that. Of course, that'll be the subject also on Monday too. So it's not the only time we're going to talk about it. So Juan Soto is the next subject here on the Dead Red podcast. Rejected a 14-year, $440 million offer, which is about $31 million a year. Because he rejected that offer, the Nationals refused to fly him out to the All-Star game. With that being said, he is a World Series champ, home run derby winner, which is new, two-time All-Star, two-time All-MLB first team, two-time Silver Slugger, All-MLB second team, and that's pretty much that. So I'm going to go into a couple of things here. So Lucas says MH would probably do an emergency space on Twitter, and Tony says Ovaltine. I think the Red Sox are filled up in the outfield, so I don't know that they would need Juan Soto. But in your imagination, Sox, would you make the trade and give up a lot of those pieces?
No. You're
content?
Yeah, 100% no. Like I've never been a big one of those big trade guys. Like I just don't feel like they work out. And I'd like to see the numbers on them, but I don't think it would work out.
So you think it's kind of like a situation, and I'm not going to make this comparison to the Yankees, but like a net situation where they trade for pieces, they sign pieces, and it's done like that.
Yeah,
you're not a fan of that.
You see it in basketball a lot. You saw the Lakers bring in Dwight Howard and Steve Nash along with Kobe. That didn't look how well that worked out. But yeah, I don't think the long-term contracts are what the Red Sox are interested in.
Yeah, guys, definitely keep the questions coming. Tony says he makes $19 million. he can afford his own flight. But it's your team. Your team's got to at least make an effort.
It's the principle.
It's the principle of the point. That's correct. Who was the last player of Soto's youth and being as great as he is to essentially want to get traded, not sure in the MLB? Well, I will tell you this. Bryce Harper won the home run derby in 2018. The next year, he left the Nationals. And Juan Soto won the home run derby this year.
Next year,
I don't know. That's a dangerous precedent to set if you're Washington. Well, one of my first questions to answer, and this could be a group discussion as well, can the Yankees, with realistic expectations, pay Judge and Soto at the same time? I'm going to say, in a fairy tale world, if I was the GM, yes. But with the Cashman era, I would say no. Because I feel in this situation, it's one or the other. Now, most teams won't have to make that decision, but because of what we're dealing with and the Yankees haven't signed Judge to a contract extension, I think it comes down to that. Where it is possible that they trade for Soto, but at the end of the year, it's either going to be Soto doesn't get an extension and we let him write out his contract, or we let Judge walk and Soto gets the extension. So, your thoughts on that, Sox?
I think that's a good point. You're not going to get both, but the fact that they might let one walk and the other sign, that's a good point. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Soto goes elsewhere outside of our division at least, but that's a good point.
So Donovan says next year the All-Star game is in Seattle. Okay, that's very interesting. MH says no way that they pay both. Right. Tony says thoughts on the Jeter documentary and also the hate on Twitter has been received by people posting a player who they feel are more deserving of a docuseries. I haven't seen a lot of hate on Twitter, at least in my threads, maybe because I'm mostly, followed by Yankee fans and all that stuff. I thought it was good for, the most part and probably 99.9% of it. With that being said, though, I don't know. I don't know why anyone would hate it because, someone else should deserve it. Like, who is more deserving of it, in my opinion? At least at this point. Now, you could name some players, maybe a guy like Griffey, but Jeter was a well-known player. He was a great player in his time. Once again, Griffey, you can name a couple other players, but I don't know. I just, if it's the argument that somebody else should have gotten the docuseries, I'm not necessarily in agreement to that. I don't.
That's a dumb argument because you can make another docuseries. It's not like there's one docuseries.
Exactly. Like that you can make more. It's not the only one. Now, of course, it talks about, in terms of investment. Will ESPN want to invest, for example, a docuseries on David Ortiz to make this about the Red Sox? Maybe they don't want to. Maybe they want to invest it, in a Ken Griffey documentary. Maybe they want to invest it in something else. I don't know, but I think that's why people are fighting over it. But I think Jeter did deserve this. Did you hear about the 76ers ad getting a new stadium in a couple of years? 76ers getting a new stadium in a couple of years? I did not hear about that.
They should fix their product on the goddamn floor before they fix their arena.
Yeah, I mean, listen, James Harden did take a pay cut, but they should fix his turnovers before they fix the stadium. I mean, yeah. Then again, too, like Philly isn't that nice. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to the stadium? And it's very hard to put a stadium in a city like that. And I'm not even talking about dangerous. Like Chicago, there's areas where you could put stadiums in. New York City, you can't do that. Maybe in the outer skirts like Staten Island and the rural parts of Brooklyn and Queens, yeah, sure, and maybe the Bronx, but I just don't see where they're going to put another stadium. Maybe they'll resurface the stadium. Maybe they redesign it, but I don't think that should be. I think they should just be serious in the playoffs before they do that shit. Yeah, David Ortiz could be another guy they do a documentary on.
That'd be awesome.
That would be an interesting one. I feel like Fox would definitely do a documentary on him.
Yeah.
Probably because he's a reporter and all that stuff for him. How much of the farm would you have to be give up? Now, this is where Tony comes in a little bit because he did send me a thing via Twitter that a Nationals coverage page as a mock for Juan Soto. Now, I think this is very, very overvalued because there's at least 5 to 7 top prospects for the Yankees in this trade. And now I'll read the Red Sox one as well because the Red Sox, they did this for the entire AL East. For the Yankees, they put in Anthony Volpe, who is the top prospect. They put Oswald Peraza. They put Jason Dominguez, who's number 3. They put Ken Waldichuk, who's number 5. Gleyber Torres, who's had a great year. Jonathan Loaizaga, who hasn't been great this year, but he's been a solid reliever over the course of his career. And Luis Medina, who is one of the better pitchers in the system, 11th ranked prospect. I think that's personally a little bit too much. I think a lot of people are overvaluing. Now, will you have to give up a guy like Anthony Volpe, Oswald Peraza, or Jason Dominguez? I would have no problem doing that, but you're not going to include 5 to 7 top prospects in that sort of deal. This is not Donovan Mitchell, where the Utah Jazz are asking for like 8 first-round picks. Just not happening. It's not. I don't think that's going to be what it is. Cookus says, Yo, Sox, it's been a while.
What's going on, Cookus? Good to see you.
What's going on, Cookus? Is he or is it somebody else who's the Astros fan?
Cookus is an Astros fan. That's one of my first subscribers on SoxArizona, man.
Cookus, congratulations on your win tonight. 2 wins, actually, today. So, congratulations, my man. Here's what they predicted the Red Sox would give up. Marcelo Mayer, shortstop, first-ranked prospect. Tristan Casas, second-ranked prospect, first base. Brian Bello, right-handed pitcher, third-ranked prospect. Outfielder Jarren Duran. 6th ranked prospect, third baseman Blaze Jordan. 11th ranked prospect, Jay Groom. That's the left-handed pitcher. 13th ranked prospect, Josh Winchowski. And then 22nd ranked prospect, catcher Nathan Hickey. Now, here's where I think this guy is totally wrong. And I'll pull it up on the screen just to show you guys as well, so that I'm not losing my marbles and that you guys believe me. I don't think he's taking... Now, obviously, I think he's just taking prospects and, throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. I think you got to look up how many of these guys are actually in the top 10, in the top 100 in baseball. I don't think this guy's doing that. Because you take a look and, okay, so Tony says the Orioles list is ridiculous. This will be the Orioles list. Grayson Rodriguez, right-handed pitcher. Gunnar Henderson, shortstop. Colton Cowser. I don't know if he even spelled that right, to be fair. Third-ranked prospect. And I think I did see him a couple of weeks ago when I was in Coney Island seeing the Cyclones. They actually faced Aberdeen. So I did see Colton play. Left-handed pitcher, D.L. Hall. That's the 4th-ranked prospect. Third baseman, Kobe Mayo, 6th-ranked prospect. Outfielder, Heston Kjerstad, 8th-ranked prospect. Drew Rome, 15th-ranked prospect, left-handed pitcher. And Gene Pinto, right-handed pitcher, 28th. See, I feel like the Orioles have a ton of guys in the top 100, and I feel like that would be still way too much because that's, once again, overvaluing. So, Tony, you are right about that. With that being said, how many current players would be in a deal for a guy like Juan Soto? I think Gleyber Torres would be one of the guys in that deal. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like a lot of players, not necessarily pitchers, but a lot of the guys would be prospects and not even making their debut yet. On the brink of it, guys like Waldichuk, guys like Oswald Peraza, guys like Volpe, but not necessarily players like J.P. Sears or Michael King. So in terms of how much of the farm you would have to give up and how many current players would be in the deal, I think Loaizaga could be, but I think Gleyber Torres, yeah, you could give him out in the deal because you have DJ LeMahieu. I mean, he's the best second baseman on the team. How would the Yankees take on the contract? Well, actually, the whole question is, would any team or even the Yankees take on the contract of Patrick Corbin? I don't think the Yankees are going to do that, and I think it's a little shameful for the Washington Nationals to do that and basically throw out there, listen, you got to take on a bad contract, because if you're asking for all these prospects, if that's the case, and Anthony Volpe's at the top of their list, you got to be like, are you serious? Like, why are you asking for a top mind, or I should say a top player in your system? I just don't believe that throwing in a bad contract would be. And if the Yankees took that, they're seriously stupid. Would you give up Judge for Soto in the essence that Judge walks via free agency and Soto, what was I going to say? And Soto becomes that guy you signed to an extension? I would say no, but I'll explain in a minute. Donovan says, Sox, what's your most hated Red Sox?
Most hated Red Sox? I don't know if I've ever...
Probably the guy you hate the most. Like, I hate Joey Gallo. He sucks balls.
Probably Hirokazu Sawamura. I can't stand this guy with his... I mean, hey, he's got a good splitter, but coming over here to the big leagues, I think his first time pitching in the MLB was he's 36 years old. I mean, he can't cut his hair. I don't know what the fuck his deal is with his hair. I mean, it sticks out like 3 feet on both sides sometimes. Yeah, he's my choice.
So he says Sawamura. I say Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo is on that list 100% because he was so overrated coming to the Yankees. People thought he was going to do good. I said, look, this guy's ain't going to be shit. And that was before I found out about his tick. And, well, of course, I'm right, but I don't want to be right. So the question was, would you give up Judge for Soto in terms of... Let me ask you, Sox, how about that? If the situation was you let Judge walk in free agency and you sign Soto with a massive extension, would you do that?
I would. It depends. Like, yes, if they're already looking about, like, who knows what they're thinking about already. If you're thinking about letting Judge go, then yes, that's 100% a good option. But realistically, I think they're going to sign Aaron Judge to an extension, and like I said, Soto's going to go out somewhere else outside of the division.
Tony says, I hate Jackie Bradley Jr. for the Sox, which, outside of the fan base for the Sox, I don't get why Jackie Bradley Jr. would be a hated player. Like Devers, maybe. Bogarts, maybe, because they're good. I don't see why Bradley would be hated. But
I don't know. I think Tony's trying to bust my balls here.
I guess Tony has his reasons, but he also hates Donaldson for the Yankees. Okay, I could see that. Because Donaldson is known as an asshole across the MLB. But in my opinion, would I give up signing Judge to an extension and having him walk in free agency for Soto? Honestly, I'm going to say no. Here's why. I'm going to say no because, not that I'm a Judge homer or anything like that, that would limit your options in 2 ways. That would limit how many guys you could get from your system because you would be giving up so much via the trade. You know, you'd be giving up Volpe and Waldichuk, and you would have to reboot your farm system a little bit, A. B, if you sign Soto to that extension, how many guys can you get in free agency? How many guys can you get that are relief pitchers? How many guys you get or that are shortstops? You won't even be in the market because this guy wants $40, $50 million a year. Of course, that's not necessarily a projection. That's more of a, I would say, guess. But if he wants between the 30 and 50 range, how are you going to have room, even with the money coming off the books, for a relief pitcher, for a shortstop, for another starter? So, in my opinion, even though Soto is a great player, I won't be mad if they trade for Soto. But at the same time, I would rather sign Judge to a contract extension, knowing what the Yankees are as an organization and how they operate. And that way you have some wiggle room for other needs. Then you could go out and get them and be a good team and let Soto go to another team, and another team could have some wiggle room because you don't have one of the higher payrolls. But there's a ton of bad contracts on this team, and I feel like that's not going to relinquish itself until 2025. If Judge joined another AL East team, He'd be one of the most hated players like that in Yankee land.
It would be the Sox too. He would come to the Sox if anything.
If that happened, I wouldn't know what to say. Like
What would you do? What would you do?
I would blame a lot of that on the Yankees, honestly. If we kept Soto in that situation and we traded for Soto, I wouldn't be as mad. But if we didn't have an option to go out and get like another good piece, and we didn't trade for Brian Reynolds and he just wandered off to the Sox, the Jays, I would hate him a little bit. Not gonna lie, I would hate. Not that I would cheer for him on another team, but I would hate him a little bit because he went to a rival. Even though that's his own decision, that's his career choice, whatever you want to say. But I would blame a lot of that on the front office. I'd be like, you just let him go to a rival. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
So I would hate that. And I've talked before to Sox about him possibly wanting Aaron Judge. And he's like, even before the Ref Snyder thing and him coming along, he's like, well, I just don't see the Red Sox doing that because they put out a base offer and that's pretty much it if he doesn't take it. So
yeah,
I just feel like he's coming back with the Yankees. And if he doesn't, I'm going to be really, really pissed off. Would this limit other needs you could get via the free agency route or the trade route? With the Yankees and the Dodgers, I feel like for some reason they will spend more. But in terms of trading for Juan Soto, yes, because you would be rebooting the farm system once again. And you don't have an answer at shortstop. You don't have an answer in terms of some of these bullpen and starter guys. And Josh Donaldson's not a for sure answer at third base. So, yeah, that would limit some of the needs. That would limit some of the resources you have in terms of money and in terms of going out there and having prospects and, just having trade pieces. How about that? And the final question, would you make this deal and who will end up trading for him? And now I'm actually going to go in the chat real quick and take a look at our poll because I did put up a poll a couple hours ago that said, who will Juan Soto go to? We're going to take a look at that. So, so far we got 16 votes.
Okay.
For the poll. So that's very good. 31% say other. 50% say the Yankees. Wow. So that's 8 for the Yankees. Holy shit. Okay, so maybe my confidence is back up again. Dodgers 12%. 6% for the Giants and 31% for Mets or other. So I think Tony had a team. Tony said the Cardinals. So that's another one. I don't know how their outfield would look and how much they would have to give up, but that's an interesting take. But we appreciate everyone who was voting on the poll and stuff like that. Would you make this deal? Actually, we have to go back, of course, to the original question. Who do you think is going to make the deal for him?
Who do I think is going to make the deal for him? So it's 100% not Washington, right? Like they can't restructure and offer him another deal?
I think all bets are off at this point. The fact that A, they rejected his last offer. B, the fact that they didn't even fly him out. I think that's a burnt bridge.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, okay, so that makes sense. To be honest with you, I can see the Yankees becoming a possibility there, but if I'm being honest with you, I have no idea. Like you need a good outfielder that needs that much money. What team is looking for that kind of contract?
You know what could be possible now that I think about it, and it's not necessarily. It may happen. It may not happen. Since his big year, Cody Bellinger has been a major disappointment.
Yeah.
Major. He's in like the 219, the 220 range. He hasn't really had that much power. Let's just say, in my opinion, just overall, I think the Dodgers are going to end up trading for him. I feel like they will be that team. They traded for Max last year. They got Trey Turner in that deal. And yeah, I feel like Cody Bellinger could go to the Nationals. I don't know why I feel that way. I don't know how much money he is being paid and owed. I think he's got a big contract, and I'm going to take a look at that right now, actually, because Cody Bellinger. Okay, so Bellinger Let's take a look at the Dodgers salary. Dodgers salary. Okay, so the Dodgers right now, Bellinger is being paid $17 million. So that's actually a little bit tough. Because Bellinger has not lived up to the hype of being that certain player. He's hit once again, 219. He's struggled over the past few seasons with injuries and all that stuff. So maybe he's not in that deal. But what you could do if they offered Corbin, they could say, okay, we'll take on Corbin for the money that you're giving him. And we'll take that on. Maybe you guys take on Cody Bellinger, but at the same time, it's basically like trading a rock for a rock. Orioles fans really want him, but I don't. You don't want Juan Soto? Why? Because, and obviously, once again, you could probably elaborate, Tony, but I guess you want more wiggle room in terms of your guys and your money, and the fact that you guys have a couple of nice outfielders to start. So I'm gonna guess it's that. Donovan says I wouldn't trade for Cody. His like is Joey Gallo of the NL. I feel like he's the Chris Davis because Davis had that 53 home run year, and ever since then, he was trash. And then they got rid of his contract and he retired, and that was pretty much the end of that. Bellinger's hitting 210 this year. He struck out 98 times so far this year, which is more than a year ago, and he's had 11 home runs. Since his 47 home run year, in 3 years, he's had, 12 plus 10. He's had 33 home runs in 3 years.
Wow. That's disappointing.
I was so excited for him to come up and be one of the better bats of the MLB.
Yeah.
But he's Chris Davis now, I guess. Too much money. I want money for pitching. Okay, so, obviously that's a good point to bring up. That does limit your resources a little bit in terms of the future because wherever you need pitching, whether it's the relief part of the bullpen, all that stuff, or you need starters, listen, you don't want to limit your resources in terms of that if you don't got them in the system. He says also as well, a lot of good free agent pitchers at the end of the season. I'll definitely look at the free agent class. I actually will do it now. We'll be wrapping this up probably in a few minutes once we hit the 2-hour mark. So be sure to get your questions in. Until then, I'm going to look up 2023 free agent class. MLB. Now, just a question, Sox, that goes way off the topic, but do you think that the Knicks are actually going to get with Donovan Mitchell?
I don't know. It seems like that kind of deal has been brewing for a while, so I could see that happen. Donovan Mitchell's one of those players that I think is heavily, heavily overrated. But yeah, he's one of those market guys you bring in. He's going to bring a lot of TV views, guys in the seats. But I'll take Devin Booker over Donovan Mitchell any day.
And what's funny as well, shouts to the Houston Astros report. Go Astros. Congratulations on your win tonight. Astros report, Houston report, whatever. Congratulations. You guys own us. Thought I'd say that right now. I'm not bowing down, but I'm just saying. So here are the free agents for next year in terms of pitching. Nathan Eovaldi's one of them. Chris Sale has a player option. Shots to Houston Sports Report. He has subbed to both channels, man. Also, Big Beat Reactions. Sub up to Big Beat Reactions. Sox has been doing really well on there in terms of the content. He's doing a lot of great music reactions. Sub up to there as well. That's his second channel. Noah Syndergaard's a free agent, so that's another option. Whether it's the Yankees or the Orioles, and you need another guy. Charlie Morton, he has a club option. I already mentioned Chris Sale, David Price, but David Price has been terrible the last few years, so nobody wants that. Yeah. How did you feel about him as a Sox?
I liked him. Hey, I thought, and he wasn't horrible for us. He's part of that World Series run. So David Price goes down as a World Series champion for the Red Sox all time. I mean, that's awesome. I got to see him pitch twice while he was with us. One of my favorite pitchers ever. As a kid, he was. People forget, man. David Price back with the Rays. When he was dominant, stud. Oh my God, he was so good, and I liked his stint with us. It was fun. It was a fun time.
Donovan says, "I would say this: Donovan Mitchell will decline in a few years, but I could be wrong. I think though, even with any sport, and I could say this about Donovan Mitchell as well, um, the most important part of trading for a player like Mitchell, or even talking about a guy like Juan Soto, is not focusing on how many years down the line how good they will be, but getting a championship within the window. If the Yankees, for some reason, I don't think they will, they pull out a Juan Soto trade and they have Aaron Judge, they have to win the World Series this year. There's no doubt. They have to. If they don't win the World Series this year, and it's because of either a need or something, we could blame Cashman for a need, or we could just blame the players themselves. But if that's the case, they have to win the World Series this year because they're not paying Judge and Soto both. We know that. But this is the best year, even if you don't trade for Soto in the window, to win a World Series. And you could say with the Knicks, well, they signed Brunson to a max contract. They got RJ Barrett. They got a couple of young cats. And if they have that and, Donovan Mitchell added to the mix, maybe I know there's been talks about possibly Westbrook coming over and then them buying out his contract, which wouldn't make a lot of sense when LA could just do that. Also as well, then again, that would be Randall going to LA probably. And then that would also entail maybe Carmelo coming back to the Mecca, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's a fit. I know a lot of people want that to happen, though. So it's all about getting a championship in players' prime and in a window. Because it's not just Soto, it's not just Judge, it's also Stanton, Cole, those guys in their prime. Tony Clark says Wade Miley. How has Wade Miley done this year? Let's take a look at that real quickly. Wade Miley this year, and now I can't find his page, which is
Former
interesting.
Diamondback.
Former Diamondback, that is correct. Former Oriole, former Seattle Mariner, former Houston Astros. He's been with a ton of teams, but so far this year, he's only had 4 starts. 1-0, 2.84 ERA, 4 starts. A total of 12 strikeouts in 19 innings. So not a high strikeout guy, but I guess decent, but you have to worry whether he's going to be back to form or not. Adam Wainwright, but he's 40. He's probably going to retire. Luis Severino actually has a club option, so if the club decides, they'll probably pick it up. Can't see why not. Corey Nabel, if you're looking for relief help, I know he hasn't been that good, though. Craig Kimbrell, Kenley Jansen, Aroldis Chapman, probably not looking at those guys. Joe Musgrove, he's a free agent, so maybe they pick up the tabs on him. Sean Manaea is a free agent. That's another one. Kyle Gibson, he's a free agent. So a lot of good names, Tony. I can see why maybe you don't want Soto because you want to pick up on these guys. Tyler Anderson, Jake Odorizzi, some pretty good names here. I'm not going to lie to you. And maybe the Yankees pick one of these guys up. Shouts to Daniel Berry, officially Rams 22 champs. What's going on, Daniel? Donovan says, I've heard some reports about the Met organization that Jacob deGrom could opt out of his contract to become a free agent this offseason. I think that's going to happen. Whether they sign him back, I'm not predicting that. I'm not making a bet on that. But I don't think he's going to opt. I think he's going to opt out. And we'll see where he goes. Because it's going to be weird, though. If he doesn't sign with the Mets after the opt-out, him and Syndergaard will be both in free agency.
Yeah.
And Mets fans will probably be a little upset about that. But Sox, man, final thoughts.
I know the Mets are good. They're good this year, but it feels like those two have been in jail over there, just serving time in the Mets. Let these guys get out here and show people their arms a little bit, But thanks, guys, for watching another episode of the Dead Red Podcast. Always fun as and the chat can vouch for us. We're always interactive with the chat. I appreciate you guys' comments as always. We do. And sub up to both channels, Big Blue in the Bronx, SoxArizona. And we'll be back next week with some more fun baseball content. We need to have the Sox step on the gas a little bit against our division because that's going to decide it. A bunch of division games coming up. So we'll talk next week. Hopefully we can get some wins going.
Yeah. Donovan says, I heard the Rangers make sense for DeGrom. That's possible. Once again, it comes down to, do they have the money? after spending a lot this offseason and it's not working out for them so far, I think they spend the money. That's one of the questions. And if not, maybe they go to Syndergaard or, if they're still, once again, wanting to spend the money. But we appreciate you guys coming out. Hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops your drops. Share this out as well. Share out both channels. Once again, every Thursday or probably around the 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, the Braves could make sense. Yep. Charlie Morton's a free agent, so I could see why that would happen. But also, they got the Olsen contract and a couple of other things. Depends, once again, how much they want to spend. But trade deadline is heating up. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, the Yankees can get out of their funk. But we appreciate the comments. MH, Houston Sports Report, Tony, Jeffrey, NYG Jeffy, Donovan, all you guys, great support tonight. And we will see you next Thursday. Peace out and good night.